Hi, everyone. Hello. My name is Rachel Graham, and I am here to talk with you today about empowering children of alcoholics. Um, I can everyone, can I get some hearts or some likes or something so that I know that people can see me? I'm not able to see the comments, so I would love it if people are here, if they could just let me know so that I know that I'm clear and ready to go. So I'll just wait like 1 minute and then we will get started. All right, I see someone here. Can you give me some hearts or some likes or something so I know that you can hear me? I'm sorry that I can't see the comments. All right, getting reactions. Okay, awesome. All right, well, I'm going to get started. I do apologize in advance that I can't see the comments, but if you have any questions or anything that you want to comment about throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the comments, or you can also personal message me and I will definitely get back to you for sure. So first things first, my name is Rachel Graham. I am a social worker and I also am a certified recovery coach. I have worked with children and families for a number of years, and most recently in the capacity of having my own coaching program about empowering children of alcoholics. It's essentially a program for the non-addicted spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, that sort of thing, and how to empower the children and help them work through a really trying and difficult time and have them hopefully come out on the other side breaking that cycle of addiction. So I want to, of course, thank Mallory and Anna for having me today. I've been really excited to have this opportunity to speak with all of you. And when they asked me to speak about addiction, which I'm obviously very passionate about, there was a million things that I could have talked about, and but I really felt that the most important thing for educators like yourself is empowering your students and your children. And so I felt that that would obviously be very, very relevant for this wonderful group of educators. So obviously in schools, there are school psychologists, there are social workers, there are all kinds of amazing resources. However, typically, someone has a specific niche or something that they're really passionate, educated, or have a lot of experience in. And I'm sure that there are tons of school social workers and psychologists that have a lot of experience with addiction, but probably not all of them, because they're working with all the students about all kinds of like the school issues, making referrals, things like that. So I'm not saying that they don't have knowledge, because they sure do. Wonderful, wonderful resource. But if someone hasn't actually walked in the shoes of someone, as we all know, I have in a lot of different capacities, which is what I want to share with you today. And I want to give you facts. I want to give you real life experiences. And I truly believe that knowledge is power, and the more people that can be educated in this mission, in all these types of things, the more my mission can be accomplished. So when I talk about addiction today, I'm really speaking more specifically about alcoholism. But obviously, so much of what I will be talking about can be applied to drugs and all kinds of other addictions. So just to get started, and I'm sure many of you know, but let's just start with the basics. What is alcoholism? Hold on one second here. Why is this not moving? Sorry, I got my notes over here and they don't want to work for me. Okay, well, so the typical myth of alcoholism is that it's a person who is like a bum on the street, a person who cannot control themselves. This label portrays the image that an alcoholic is a bum or is out of control. I've heard people say things such as, I wish, he or she wouldn't drink so much, or geez, why can't they just realize that enough is enough? I think we all know that alcoholism does not discriminate. It can be the person that you least expect, and it can be someone of any age, any gender, any socioeconomic status. So alcoholism is the most severe form of alcohol abuse, and it involves the inability to manage drinking habits. It also can be referred to as an alcohol use disorder. And there are 3 categories: mild, moderate, and severe. But all of them can cause harmful and long-lasting side effects emotionally and physically. And if left untreated, it really can spiral out of control. So people with alcoholism sometimes feel like they cannot function normally without alcohol. So it can affect their career. It can affect their personal relationships and essentially their overall health. And it's also can affect the family who surrounds the person. You know, as they say, alcoholism is a family disease. So the disease is progressive. It is going to worsen and have more damaging effects if it's not treated. As I said, like it can completely spiral out of control. Many people drink to excess because they believe that it's going to help them. Like they think it's going to help them cope with life. It's going to help relieve stress. They're going to feel good. They're going to cope with a loss. They're going to overcome anxiety. It's going to help them with lack of connections. You know, the feelings of shame, having trauma in the past. A lot of people are using alcohol to cope. So in addition to the short-term effects of drinking, such as slower reaction times, lowered inhibitions, blurry vision, consuming too much alcohol over time can also affect the long-term health, such as liver disease, heart disease, cancer, diabetes complications, and vision problems as well. So in the United States, there are about 14.8 million people, which is about 5.4% of the population, that are dependent or abuse alcohol. And 13,000 people try it for the first time every single day. Alcoholics Anonymous, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, has more than 2 million members. And I mean, and that's only the people that are in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, it's only those people that are actually showing up and participating in that program. There's plenty of other people that are, you know, working their recovery differently, or people that are just really suffering. So those statistics are from 2019. So I am making the assumption that due to the pandemic that those numbers are, and those percentages are heightened significantly at this point. So a lot of people ask, how does addiction happen? So think about it. Imagine that you are drinking alcohol and your friend asks you something about it. You know, like, hey, didn't you have a little too much? Or why are you drinking that? And maybe you get really defensive about it. Maybe like deep down, you've already kind of been questioning your usage and tried harder to moderate, but continuously would come to the same conclusion that one drink was just never enough. One always led to more, and more always led to problems in life. And then think about that even though those problems that were so significant, that wasn't enough to give you to have the strength and say, like, I quit, I'm not going to do this anymore, this isn't for me. The urge continues, even if it makes absolutely no sense and it's just too strong. It's compulsion, really. So that's really what it's like to have an addiction, losing control over use of alcohol or drugs, having chaos and havoc in your life, problems in relationships and jobs and with, you know, drunk driving, like the law, you know, all kinds of things. But you still continue to find yourself drinking anyway. So I can speak directly from experience. And to be completely honest, I am a recovering alcoholic. And the example that I just gave was actually me. And I can say no one chooses to be an alcoholic. It's like the same idea as telling an anorexic to go eat a sandwich. It's not that easy at all. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have such a rampant addiction problem in society, right? I mean, if it was just so easy as to like, okay, don't drink, or go eat the sandwich, like that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share an excerpt with you from a journal entry that I wrote a little under 20 years ago. So I actually had been in recovery for a couple of years, but journaling, I love to write. I'm actually thinking of maybe I should do a blog on something like this. So maybe that'll be a new project because I just want to share my story and want to help people. So I know that I said that this presentation and talk today was going to be about empowering children of alcoholics, and do not worry, I am getting there. But I just want to set the stage, as to what addiction is and real life examples. So anyway, so let me read the journal entry to you, and then we're going to talk about alcoholism through the generations. So don't mind me looking down here at my journal entry here. So I have never been a person that has dealt with transitions well. When I got to college, I was, in good shape. My mindset was great. I was excited to be there. But as time went on, I wasn't feeling as confident. I wasn't happy. I was miserable. And looking back, that particular school was not for me to begin with, and I ended up transferring. So when I got back home for my freshman year of college, it had been such a hard year for me, just, in every way, or, at least I felt that way. Like my whole world was, shattering, just, as a college student, because you don't have all the responsibilities that you have as an adult. But to me, this was my world. All I wanted to do was go out and have a good time. I had really never been that big of a partier. I dabbled in alcohol and parties my senior year of high school, and I would drink once in a while my freshman year at college. I wouldn't drink that often because I went home a lot on the weekends and I was focusing on homework and transferring out. However, when I did drink my freshman year in college, I drank to excess. And what I found was that I felt a lot more social and I felt a lot more attractive when I was drinking and, lost my inhibitions, was drunk. So when I came home that summer, I started going to parties. I started getting like totally trashed, teenage behavior. And I enjoyed my summer with my friends, and I didn't have any scary experiences that I can recollect. So by the time I transferred to my new school, I was feeling really good. My self-esteem was better. I continued my new party-like personality and immediately grew really popular in my new school, which wasn't even the point. It was just coincidental. I decided that I'd had a horrible year prior, and I was just, I was going to live it up. So I skipped class a lot. I partied a lot. My grades were okay for the most part. I don't really know how I got by. But I always remember feeling like I always seemed to be a little more drunk than everyone else. No one thought it was a big deal because we were all in college, right? I mean, but I just had this feeling. But I was having a good time. I wasn't, gaining weight from it. My grades were okay. I had a good social life, so everything was fine. I had this crazy tolerance for alcohol, which is really kind of scary looking back on it. I could drink like 10 or 12 drinks over the course of a few hours, and I'd be walking and talking and be the life of the party. And I'm pretty short too. So I'm not like a I'm only a little over 5 feet tall. So I'm not like this petite, tiny person, but I mean, I'm short. So that's a lot of alcohol for someone, for anyone really, in a couple of hours, let alone someone who's, who's not a larger person. No one could really figure out why I wasn't passing out. I mean, I was just, woohoo, everything's wonderful and we're having so much fun. So one night towards the end of my sophomore year, I went to dance with a guy that I had been seeing for a couple of weeks, and he broke things off with me that night. You know, we were going to be going back home for summer, and we didn't live near each other, blah, 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 blah. He left my dorm room, and I still remember to this day, I just went straight for the bottle of vodka that was in the fridge. Um, all my friends were still at the dance, and I just started drinking vodka, like straight. Um, so after a little while, my friends came home and they caught me with like this massive, I mean, like massive bottle of vodka that I was drinking from. And I was crying and I was drinking. So they calmed me down, grateful for them. They got the bottle out of my hand and they took me out to a diner because I went to school and grew up north in the Northeast. And there's lots of diners up there that are open 24 hours. So, uh, but when I got back, I still insisted on going to a party up the street, and pretty much like no one could really stop me at that point. So I went to this party. I proceeded to get even more drunk than I already was. I went upstairs with a friend crying. I called my best friend who was out of state at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was a complete disaster. And the following day was a big party day at my school where everyone drinks all day. So I woke up half drunk the next morning and I started drinking again. But I was a college student, so it didn't seem like it was abnormal. When I got through that year, everything continued into summer. I had a flexible work schedule. I was rehearsing for a play that I was in at night. I was partying on the weekends. I was sleeping all day. Normal college students to my parents, I mean, they didn't realize like that I was drinking so much. They might not have thought I was drinking at all. I don't really know, but they always trusted me. So here's where it gets like, this is tough. I don't even remember when I first drove home drunk. I always insisted that I drive home no matter what. I realized I had a problem, like a serious problem, when I would make a conscious decision to drive myself home, totally wasted, but had enough sense not to take anyone with me. There were days that I would leave a friend's house and not know if I was supposed to turn right or left. I somehow I took back roads to avoid cops on the roads. And apparently I was a perfect drunk driver because people would follow me home and I didn't roll a stop sign. I didn't stop short. I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to. The saddest part really is that I said, well, you know, if I die like this, then I'm going to die. I mean, this is how down I was on myself. And I said, but I'll never drive anyone with me because I would not be able to live with myself knowing that I killed someone or hurt them. But I obviously could never volunteer to be a designated driver, like ever. I could never miss a party, ever. My friends would force me to drive home with them, and someone else would drive my car home. I was a disaster. I couldn't look in the mirror and think I was attractive unless I was drunk. So, like I said, my family always trusted me. They had like no clue what was going on. I remember watching Oprah Winfrey on her show way back then in the 90s. Where a drunk driver had killed someone and was back on the show completely full of remorse. And in the past, I had always felt that, you know, it's only horrible people that do that. You know, how could someone drink and drive? How could someone kill someone, you know, and how could someone just not do, you know, why couldn't they just stop and not do that? But then I stepped back and I looked at myself and I realized that the person on the Oprah show really, it could have been me. And it really, really hit home for me at that juncture. I was completely terrified, but I was still kind of in denial. And it was friends of mine that sat me down, told me that I had problems, dragged me to Alcoholics Anonymous one Friday morning in hot July. And I was seeing a therapist at the time, and I'd made the decision to work on my alcoholism as a top priority, obviously, because it could kill me or it could kill someone else. And I still remember my social worker being teary and telling me that if I was going to kill myself if I kept this up. So I had to make a decision about whether or not I was important enough to myself to seek the help and try to work through this like horrible disease and addiction. So essentially, it was a gradual process, but when I returned to school that fall, I no longer drank. I made a decision that I would only drink while on breaks at home. Like I was trying to kind of like, well, you know, I can manage it because I'm not going to do it, you know, this time of the year. I'm just going to do it this time of the year. And when I'm home is less often than when I'm in school. I lost friends because I said I was an alcoholic. They didn't believe me. They told me I was a normal college student. I wasn't an alcoholic. And I was just like, you know what? I'm trying to change my life here. And if you don't want to be a part of it, then go on and do your thing. But this is where I'm going with it. And this is what I know deep down. But I did also gain new friends, and most of them didn't really care if I wasn't the party girl anymore, which was like shocking to me. I went to parties, I was social. I would leave if I was upset or if I was having issues. I would just, leave. And it was really, really tough. It was a lonely year. But I was dealing with the open wound, my life without a way to fill a void. And some days I don't know how I did it. So that Thanksgiving break, so this was my third year in college, second year at the school that I transferred to. Thanksgiving break, I didn't have a desire to drink while I was home. But then I was home for a couple weeks over the holidays and New Year's Eve, of course, especially to college students or even everybody. Everybody wants to have a couple drinks on New Year's Eve. I remember I was in New York City, and I just got completely wasted. So it was Friday, January 8th, 1998, and I went to a party at a friend's house. I drank a lot of champagne from New Year's. I drank a lot of beer, and my friends had not let me take my car over there. I got a ride home with someone who was okay to drive, and I remember telling him, "Thank you so much. If you weren't driving me home right now, I would be driving." And he looked at me and he was like, "Why would you do that to yourself? And put yourself in so much danger?" So that I never forget that moment. I just remember him looking at me, even in my drunken haze. He was like, why? Why would you do that? So he brought me home. I went upstairs. I went to sleep. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, thank God I got home safely. Thank God, and for all the other times when I'd been behind the wheel, how am I still alive? I was grateful. I remember the sun was peeking through the blinds in my room because it was daytime. It was later in the day, and the sun was hurting my eyes. I had this pounding headache. My stomach was in knots. I never felt so awful in my entire life. And I said to myself, I just never, ever want to feel this way ever again. So that was it. I mean, I never drank again. It took a lot of support. It took a lot of help. The first year was the toughest, but I knew that it just wasn't worth it. I never had the opportunity to drink like a normal person. I don't think I was capable of that. When I had tried that, it only lasted a week or two, and then I was back to where I was. I only knew how to drink in excess. So, like I said, I was full of gratitude. I learned who my real friends were, and I learned what an amazing and supportive family I have, and that things happen for a reason. So that's kind of my story. And I promise this is all going to work out through, we're going to talk about the generations now. And then, so that will bring us to the children. So most of us know, I promised in my discussion today that I would talk some about this, about the genetic connection with alcoholism. It's not a gene per se, but more of a propensity. In a study done with identical twins and fraternal twins, alcohol use disorders showed up much more commonly with the identical twins than in the fraternal twins. So that really just shows that DNA is a huge factor. But in all actuality, the way a person's body responds to a drug is really just a tiny part of the influence genes have on addiction. The strong links between addiction and a person's DNA have to do with two different genetically influenced pathways in the brain that broadly affect how the human brain processes risk, reward, and emotion. So one of the pathways is external. People who were born with brains wired for sensation seeking and reward seeking, and they don't stop to think about their actions or the consequences of their actions as much as others. Maybe some impulsivity there. More risky environments, and are more likely to try addictive substances and to develop problems. And then the second one is the internal pathway, the way that our brains are wired to cope with fear and negative emotion. Specific genetic variants that are associated with the internalizing pathway are predictive of greater risk for substance use disorders. People who are already genetically predisposed often use substances to cope or manage with emotions. But also environment and life experiences do definitely play a factor. So I'm not saying that every predisposed individual who has alcoholism in their family is going to develop an alcohol use disorder. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't drink for religious reasons. There's people that grew up in drug and alcohol situations and just will never touch the stuff. And then there are just some people who are just wired a little bit differently. And even though they have that propensity, it's environmentally, it just never, it doesn't come to the surface. So since we're talking about families, you must wonder, do I have an alcoholic in my family? Well, the answer is yes. When I was growing up, my father was an active alcoholic. As you heard in my journal entry, I was using alcohol to cope with negative emotions, and I liked the high it gave me. I didn't have to worry about anything, and I felt better about myself. So I thought. But the situation for me as a child is I felt confused. I felt despair. I had feelings of hopelessness. I would always try to be extra good in order to make my father happy so that I would feel loved by him. Like, he always said that he loved me. But I never really had that feeling that he did, because I constantly felt at blame for his actions and I couldn't control his unpredictable behaviors. And as a young child, I wasn't aware that my father was drinking and that was the problem, that's what was going on with him. So it only really provoked more confusion and more anxiety for me. And my mom, who was wonderful, always tried to fulfill my needs. But she was so focused on not, making my dad upset, angry, that kind of thing, and frequently overlooked her own self to avoid the confrontation. So my mom also had a lot of anxiety in general. So this situation, certainly didn't help it. And I truly believe that growing up in this type of environment made me turn inward with my feelings, because I never wanted to hurt anyone's feelings. I always said everything was fine. I never asserted myself. And I truly believe that these were all learned behaviors from my mother, which was her reaction from having an alcoholic spouse. If children are not aware that there's a drinking problem in their home or their family, they may not connect the dots, that their own distraught, despair, feelings of hopelessness are really due to alcohol and not them or the person that is causing the problems for them. The other thought about educating a child that I think is really important is that it helps them realize that they're not alone, and that they can understand their own circumstances in a more emotionally filling way. So it's known also that children of alcoholics may demonstrate intimacy issues as they get older, such as clinging, dependency, premature marriage, sexual promiscuity, or staying in relationships for periods of time long after the relationship may have taken a turn for the worse. Children of alcoholics tend to have difficulty trusting others, sometimes have anxiety about being abandoned, and also being able to express feelings can really be extremely difficult because they've just kind of been stuffed down, keep the peace, or hiding in their closet from whatever is going on, and just trying not to cause any confrontations or problems. Children conceal their true selves, just like I said, to meet the needs of their parents. And although they may really desire love and intimacy, they're likely to be afraid of those attachments later in adult life because they're worried, and they kind of believe that those relationships are going to be just as hurtful as some of their earlier family relationships, and have fears of abuse, exploitation, betrayal, all the feelings that they had as a child in that situation. So, when I think about all of that, it's true. I actually experienced that myself. When it came to intimate relationships, I was always drawn to men that were not emotionally available. Kind of my father being drunk and just not being available for me, in an emotional way. I somehow thought that I could fix these guys. I always stayed in relationships much, much longer than I really should have. Or even if I saw red flags or something, that I was I don't need to deal with this, but I would just cling on and I would just stay because I was really fearful of hurting the person, and not being loyal to them. That was, loyalty, even amongst all those problems, was modeled for me. And it's different, it's different for everyone. Everyone has a different story, but it did affect me later in life. And, it must have been because I was walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace with my father, and being taught not to express my sad and angry feelings in a healthy way. And I was always taught to consider a person's feelings more than my own. I really believe it was subconscious on my mom's part, but it really left a long-term effect. And so as I was an adult, I was really looking for the male attention that I lacked in my earlier childhood. So, I went through dating a bunch of guys, not emotionally available, had things that I, should have said, like, this isn't going to work for me early on, but just felt badly and felt like I should give them a chance. But then I met my husband, and he was the man of my dreams. I mean, kind, considerate, caring, and, would listen to me, could handle all my emotions. Um, and but they say that people marry their fathers, right? And I did. Unfortunately, several years into our marriage, alcohol became a huge problem in his life, and therefore a huge and detrimental problem for our family. His father was a recovering alcoholic, and for over 30 years at that point, but he had grown up with a really um, violent and really traumatic childhood. I think even more so than mine. Mine was mostly like emotional abuse, verbal type of abuse. But my husband, unfortunately, really grew up in a horrible situation. And we're just very grateful that his father made a choice to stop and to get help and was in recovery ever since. But with my husband, like, he had never had issues with drinking, like, ever. He started having problems when he was in his 40s. We found ourselves with 2 toddlers, lots of stress about finances, and his drinking started out really slowly. And just as they say, it progressed over time. First, he was having drinks of vodka after work a couple days a week. He said it was helping him relax. He was stressed. But the evenings that he drank, it was always in excess to the point where he completely lost his inhibitions, or he passed out, or, both. And as time went on, the frequency and the amounts of alcohol continued to increase. I tried endlessly to talk to him about it, to offer him help, to, try to point out what was going on, but he was in complete and utter denial, or he would tell me I was overreacting. He was just having a couple drinks and that I didn't understand because, I didn't drink. So our kids were really young at the time. So fortunately, at that juncture, they didn't really know the difference, because typically he would start drinking after they went to bed. But things just only got worse and worse. He started drinking every day. He would purchase a fifth of vodka, and during the work week, it would be gone in 3 nights, easily. And he didn't realize how much he was hurting, like, our marriage and how it was going to affect our children. He was like, well, it doesn't affect our kids because I just drink after they go to bed, that sort of thing. But he started becoming really angry. Like, it really, really progressed. He kind of went from a person who was just like, oh, I'm feeling good, and, pass out, and, but kind of missing things. People would come over and he'd have a couple drinks, then he'd be passed out up in our room. And it's like, that's not cool, but he wasn't like mean or angry or anything like that. But it really, it progressed. So day after day, night after night. And I actually started believing that I caused his drinking problem. Like me, a highly educated social worker who was raised in an alcoholic home. Over the time that he was drinking, I became more enraged, more upset, more depressed. My story is the wife of an alcoholic is for another day, because that could be a whole other talk and presentation on its own. And so now that we've gotten through these generations, and I hope that background wasn't too long, but I really wanted to have you walk in my shoes. I feel, I've worked with people in similar situations, but time and time again, I truly believe that when I'm talking to other people in, something like this, that it's most important to tell my own story, because I'm going to have the emotion, more emotion, not that I don't feel bad for clients. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible disease, but I feel like telling my story, is the best way to help people understand. And, so anyway, I lived for my children. I wasn't in the position that I could leave. I wasn't being physically harmed. And neither were my children. They weren't being physically harmed. So I decided to stay and just make the best of it, which was very, very hard. Looking back, I sometimes question that decision. It was a very difficult decision, but I didn't really have any other options at that point in time. And me being me, I wanted to give him the opportunity to get better. I felt a loyalty to stay in our marriage. I wanted to exhaust every single option before I broke up my family. But I also made the decision that even if my life was not perfect, that I was going to be sure, I was going to be damned that I was going to protect those children as much as possible from the effects of his addiction. I mean, I never went out anywhere. I was home 360 days of the year. Because I felt like I needed to be home and to protect them. And that was what I did day in and day out. I started doing a lot of reading. I got a therapist. I started talking with other women in my position. And what I learned is that if there's one stable parent, one stable and consistent parent in a child's life, that most likely they were going to turn out okay. If they just had one type of trauma per se to deal with, and they had a stable and consistent parent that they would be able to turn out okay. And so I completely made it my mission to do just that. I was going to empower my children. I was going to let them come out of this mess okay. And I knew the mistakes that my mom made, which she didn't mean to, she didn't know when I was a child, and I knew to make different decisions. A lot of the time that my husband was around, he was drunk or passed out somewhere, or he was traveling a lot for work. And so my kids pretty much grew up without him. I mean, it was really sad. Even now at ages 11 and 12, they told me that they really don't have any memories of him in their young childhood. The only memories that they really have were the few times that I might not be around where they were scared and they were fearful of his anger. So their first memories of him were negative and fearful, which is very sad. But as you can see from all of my experiences as the child of an alcoholic, as an alcoholic myself, being married to an alcoholic, I have tons of experience with this disease and its effects, not just for my education and certifications and things like that, but just on my own. And that's why I love doing coaching, because I can share my story, and I can let people know, like, I've walked in those shoes. So I want to share with you, just from my experience as a child of an alcoholic and raising children of an alcoholic, what I found that works, that empowers children the most. Being honest with the children. Don't cover up the addiction. I really and truly believe that was what was missing for me. If I knew that my dad had like a health issue, such as, or a drinking problem, and that I wasn't to blame, I believe that I would have felt differently about a lot of things. You've got to talk about it in language that kids or teenage, whoever it is, like in whatever stage of life the child is in, talk about it in language that they can understand. I told my children that, first and foremost, their dad's illness was not their fault. They didn't cause it. They can't stop it. It had nothing to do with them and everything to do with him. And of course, I validated their feelings of sadness, of fear, of confusion. I explained to them how alcohol works. Some people can have a drink or two and it's fine, and some people can't. And it can really affect their choices and reactions and their behaviors. And that, again, this had absolutely nothing to do with them. And I said that he was the only one that could make a decision to change and to seek help. I also recommend, do not badmouth the addicted parent. Children will form their own opinions and their own relationships with people. It's not someone else's job to try to cover or clean up for someone who's addicted, for their behaviors and choices. I always told my kids how much my children love them. I mean, how much their dad loved them and cared about them, but that his illness, unfortunately and sadly, was taking over him, but that he really did and truly loved them. And I knew in his heart that he did want to get better, but he just didn't know how. There was a point several years ago where I actually kicked him out of the house for a couple weeks. I told my kid that he wasn't able to talk with any of us. You know, he was off getting help and he was not able to communicate with us for a period of time. And it was really hard. It was actually Christmas time and it was very, very difficult. But it was just, that's what needed to be done because it had really gotten to the point where it was scary. And he was drinking in the morning before he went to work. I mean, it was just horrible. So I told my kids that he was getting help, talking with other people who had the same disease to help support one another. And I said that he didn't want to come home until he was getting help and able and willing to change things. So, you know, along with not bad mouthing, kind of like I said, don't cover up or make excuses. If, you know, if someone makes a promise to take the kids bowling on Saturday, but then they wake up and they're hungover and they say they can't go, don't try to cover up or make excuses for them. You know, don't say, oh, well, he's not feeling well. You know, yeah, the kids are going to be really upset and, you know, you can potentially do another activity with them, but each parent is responsible for their relationship with their child. I mean, we used to go to social events, often as a family and, you know, it was always stressful because he would always be drinking and sometimes he'd be, you know, acting weird, being inappropriate, lying down somewhere and passing out. But I said, I'm going to be damned if I'm not going to go and have a good time and not let my children have a good time. Why am I going to pull my children out of there when they're having fun with their friends? They didn't even know the half of it, of what was going on. And I was like, you know what? This is all on him. He's making himself look like a fool. He's causing the problems. This has nothing to do with me. This doesn't have to do with me. And it's not my job to babysit him. I'm responsible for myself. I'm responsible for my children. But I am no longer responsible for his decisions. So children need a support system outside of the family. And I am a true, true believer in that, which is where educators like yourselves could come in, you know, because children love their teachers, children trust their teachers, and you can be an amazing, amazing resource for them and for their family. I truly believe that an outside therapist is really important. My husband at the time refused to participate in therapy with the kids, but I went with them. And it was partially because I never wanted my kids to think that they were the problem. It was like, here, that you're going to go to therapy and things are going to get better. No, because that makes them feel like they're causing the problem. I want to fix them. And so I attended a lot of sessions with them. And I also did it because my kids were having significant behavioral issues just with me. You know, I was the safe parent. I was the one setting all the rules and boundaries. I was kind of like a single parent and they didn't always, you know, want to listen. And actually, my son had ADHD at the time and we didn't know because he was young and he wasn't having issues at school. But looking back on that, part of his behavioral issues with that were that, but for sure it was due to what was going on at home. I mean, there's just no question. So, like I said, I was pretty much felt like I was parenting as a single parent. But I knew that I wasn't perfect and I was able to admit that. And I told my kids, you know, I need help too. And we need to work together to work through these behavioral challenges and the problems that we're having. It's not about their bad behavior or anyone needing to be fixed. So also trying to let the kids live as normal a life as possible, if that's possible. Obviously, if there's physical abuse going on in the home, that's a completely different story. It's like, you got to get out, right? But if you're in that situation and, you know, you make the decision that you're not, well, if you're getting physically hurt, you got to get out of the house. But I'm just saying, if you're not, but you're still living with all of this going on, just trying to make the kids' lives as normal and consistent as possible is just so important. I kept my kids on a routine. If he was actively drinking, okay, let's go to the park. Let's go on a bike ride. Let's go visit our friends. Let's go for an overnight. We'll go visit Aunt Sally and we'll stay with her and your cousins. Try to be there as much as you can. I know it's hard, working and family and dealing with all this type of stuff, but I made it my business to be at everything that I could. The school concerts for 15 minutes, the sport games, the recitals, everything. And now my kids tell me that their memories as a young child are of me being there, me smiling at them, me supporting them. And they knew how much I loved them and how much I supported them and that I was safe. An example that is, we went to myself, my kids, my husband, we went to a July 4th party a number of years ago. And like I said, from the other party example, he got drunk really fast. He was a disaster. And we were supposed to go meet up with friends and see July 4th fireworks. Now, a lot of people would be like, oh, I got to get him home and I need to stay home and take care of him because what if something happens, while I'm out? I was at a point, I was like, nope, I got him home, got him in bed. We went and we saw the fireworks. We met up with our friends, and we saw the fireworks. And I was not going to let my kids have their July 4th ruined. And I wasn't going to sit home and babysit. This was really at a point where I was done babysitting. I was done enabling. And also don't encourage the kids to keep secrets. I mean, of course, they don't need to be telling their little friends like gory details or whatever, but to tell them like, oh, don't tell anyone that so-and-so has a drinking problem, or, it's only going to make them feel shame around it. And it's going to make them feel responsible. Like it's like something, really shameful, and they're not going to express their feelings about it. And then it's going to go inward. And we kind of know where that goes. And that can just perpetuate the cycle, keeping those feelings inward. But the person who is living with the addicted person needs to make themselves a priority and their children a priority. And it takes a lot of time for the spouse of an alcoholic to learn that you can't save them. It's a horrible, horrible feeling. But you can't, everything you do and everything you try to do could actually potentially enable them, like cleaning up their mess, babysitting them, like I said, trying to cover up for them. It's not helping. I mean, I'm convinced that there were some jobs that my husband didn't get fired on the spot, but that that it was due to his drinking, that he was moody, he was not having appropriate reactions, he wasn't prepared, just from drinking the night before. I'm not even talking about like drinking at work or anything, because he didn't typically do that, except when he started drinking in the morning, I guess, but that was because he couldn't function. It definitely affected his job. It affected his job. It affected everything. And it really only made the financial issues that we were having like worse. It wasn't helping anything. But it's just the best thing that you can really do is to help these kids and their families come up with boundaries, and to care for themselves, to make themselves a priority. And this is absolutely huge, the last one. So let me just review the things. So being honest, don't cover up the addiction. Don't badmouth the addicted person. Don't cover up or make excuses for the person. Get the children help, outside help, a therapist. Let the kids have as normal and consistent of a routine in life as you possibly can. Don't encourage them to keep secrets. And make that, like, the person who is with the alcoholic person and the children need to make their self-care a top priority. But this one is huge. And this one I think would have made a huge, huge difference for me. Talking to the kids about their genetic predisposition to addiction. So I knew when I was older that my father had a drinking problem and that it was in his family. I'm part Irish, he's Irish. So I had that going for me. Not saying all Irish people are like that, but it tends to be it can be common, more common in Irish families. But anyway, I digress. My parents taught me that alcohol was forbidden. You didn't drink till you were 21. It was illegal. You didn't do anything like that. But they never explained to me that I was predisposed and that I could have those same exact problems. And I truly, truly believe that if I knew that and I saw and knew about my father's addiction and the havoc that it caused, that I really, really don't think that things would have gone as they did. I might have thought more about it, but I didn't know. I knew it ran in the family, but yeah, I didn't know enough about it. I just knew, like, yeah, it runs in families, but it's not going to happen to me. Because I wasn't educated on it. I didn't have a full understanding. I mean, my children now, from 9, 10 years old, when you kind of start talking about things, they know what alcohol can do to them. And they know they have it on both ends. I mean, I have worried from day one about my children, just because of the predisposition on both ends. And the things that I've read are that one sip could change their life forever. It can change something in the brain. I know it sounds crazy, but this is fact. This is stuff that I have read. And I'm already teaching my children how, I don't say you can't do it, but they've had enough horrible, horrible experiences. They still have some anxiety. They still sometimes have nightmares. There's a little PTSD there due from what they experienced, seeing their father injured, falling down the stairs. I mean, I won't even go there. But just yelling, being angry, his empty promises of, yeah, we can do that. And then, what are you talking about? I don't remember that. Or, no, I never said that. Or, I don't feel well. And, they still have anger towards him. And when he's had relapses, they've been very, very angry and very, very disappointed. But kids are amazing. They're amazing. They're resilient, and they're loyal to a parent. Like, it's like, you just can't, that's their mom, that's their dad. They don't want to be angry with them. They don't want to have them taken away. So thank goodness, my husband is in recovery. My father has been in recovery for a long time. So we're all getting the support and help that we need. My kids are, my husband, he's really working hard to have that special relationship with our kids, because he wasn't there and he didn't have it. And now he wants that so badly, and the kids need him. They want that from him. So, but I have told my kids from a young age, I've already talked to them, like, okay, like if someone's pressuring you, what are you going to do about it? Like, let's talk about it. Let's come up with a solution. So the solution that we came up with is, to say that they're allergic. And they're like, well, what if someone makes me do it anyway? I said, well, if you told someone that you were allergic to peanut butter, are they going to force you to eat peanut butter? Like, who would do that? If you say you're allergic to something, that should just shut it down, at least like with your real friends, and they kind of are allergic to it. It can harm them for life. So we talk about that constantly. And my kids have always said, because I put it in their head, this is not my fault. I'll say, this is not your fault. I know it's not my fault, Mom. You didn't cause this. I know I didn't cause this, Mom. And they, at this age, and I hope it stays that way, they are telling me that they don't want to be, my daughter gets anxiety if she sees alcohol. Like, if we go somewhere and we see alcohol, and she's fearful that her father's going to start drinking it. It's hard. It's hard. There's damage there, but there is a way to work through it, and no one's life is perfect. There's always something. So everyone's story is completely different. So obviously, don't be judgmental. A lot of people thought I was crazy for staying with him all that time. But everyone has to do what's right for them at that time. And my kids have turned out great. I mean, my kids are wonderful. People compliment about, them to me, like they're the kind of people that they are. And so it's truly possible. Like kids can come out on the other side. And my hope, my wish is that if my kids, stick with what they're learning, um, that they're not going to perpetuate that cycle of addiction in their adult lives and in their families, and for my grandchildren. So it's completely possible, and I'm getting choked up, but I know firsthand it is possible to walk away um, positive and healthy and happy out of it. So anyway, I really had no idea that I was going to be talking for so long. I just put this together, everything that I wanted to share, and I really hope that it was helpful for you, and that it will help you with students, with your family, with your coworkers, um, with anyone that's going to cross your path. But those kids need you. You guys are wonderful. Your teachers, your educators, and you are a huge support system for so many of these kids, especially ones that are having a tough time at home. So I hope that I've given you some tools in your toolbox to be able to empower and support. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, if you have any questions, if there's anything that you want to know, I'm an open book. I'm happy to point you to resources. I'm happy to talk with you. Just feel free to message me. And feel free to comment here, and I will certainly get back to you. So thank you again, Anna and Mallory, so much for inviting me to do this. It has been a true, true honor. And like I said, I really hope that this was helpful, and wishing all of you a wonderful, enjoyable rest of your day. The sun is shining here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I hope it is where you are. And thank you for joining me. And I hope to connect with some of you soon. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.